did you must have thought at some stage you wouldn't even get to this, did you?
No, obviously there was periods during obviously lockdown that, you know, it was quite worrying when people were discussing that and saying things like, you know, are we ever going to get back to playing sport with spectators in the crowds and stuff? So for us to just be playing football is a bonus, but you know, hopefully very, very soon we see spectators back in the stadiums.
How do you feel pre-season's gone? A very different sort of pre-season?
Yeah, it's been mixed, and the reason I say mixed is we picked up a few niggles along the way, which has been quite frustrating. You know, we've tried to get the balance between making sure the players are ready for the start of the new season and not overdoing it with them. We've had some good games and good practice matches, as you're aware of. And, you know, listen, it's one of them where it's a competitive game tomorrow, there's no doubt about it, and we'll obviously do our utmost to try and win it. But the bigger picture, without doubt, is a week on Saturday.
A lot of new faces. Has it been a job to bed them all in?
Yes, in a way, but at the same time, you know, when we're speaking to the players, we give them a little bit of an understanding of how we do things and the way we want things done. So before coming into the building, they're aware of our philosophy, our style of play. They all know their roles that I'm expecting them to do when they come into the football club. So I'd like to think we give them a little bit of a head start. And to be fair to them, you know, most of them hit the ground running.
You must feel it really is your squad. There's only a couple of players left from the previous regime. You put your mark on the squad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's no different to any manager coming into a football club, you know, whether it's the first window or the second window. I think as a football club, not only myself, Clive, Liam, Jez, everyone has spoke about, I suppose, the change in our approach as a club. I think we've had to do it. I think there's no doubt about it. I think especially now, since COVID, I think more than ever, clubs are going to have to be financially savvy. I'm going to have to work that little bit harder to get a player in without just throwing the money at them. And I think the model that we've got certainly helps us because part of our sell will be that when a young player comes into the building, yes, we want him to do well for Lincoln and have success on the pitch for Lincoln. But the idea behind it is that someday, whether we're successful and we can get promotion to the next level at some point, hopefully, if we don't do it and a player has to do it a little bit quicker than us, then so be it.
Yeah, and I understand you're pretty happy with the signings. Overwhelmingly, you got most of your first choices.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's took, you know, a little bit longer for certain players than I would have liked. But you know, yeah, we've been quite fortunate. And look, Michael, that isn't because we've just gone, right, okay, he's a good player and we'll take him. We've spent the last 5 months trying to, you know, organise and get players and get us in a position. So there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into bringing the players into the club from everybody at the club. It's been a joint effort, and yeah, listen, we're all ready to go and looking forward to what's ahead of us.
League One as a whole looks really tough. I think it's 8 or 9 former Premier League clubs in there. It's going to be a really tough season.
Yeah, I think it's a different league from last year. I think it's a stronger league. I think and that's the greatest respect with everyone who was in there last year. But I think the sides coming up are better equipped for League One football. And obviously the sides, like you say, that have come down have been Premier League clubs previously. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't think anyone really knows what it's going to be like, if we're being honest. You know, there's certain clubs that are probably expected to be right up there, strong traditional clubs who, like you say, in the past have been playing at a higher level. But like I said, I don't think anybody knows what to expect. Obviously, the fact that, you know, we're going to go into a season at the start with no fans, we don't know which clubs are going to react the best from that. You know, you could argue that it goes against us as a club because our supporters are fantastic, and obviously they raise the roof every time we play at Sinsel or the LNER, and yeah, let's see what the first 4 or 5 games hold for everyone. But all I know is that, you know, we'll go into every game knowing that we're going to be really competitive.
How do you strike the balance in these next two games? You've been on record saying they're part of pre-season, but they're also games that have financial consequences for the club. Yeah, a difficult balance?
Yeah, it can be. It can be, yeah. And, you know, we'll certainly treat them both with respect. You could argue that the actual League Cup on Saturday is actually financially not necessarily a gain. It could be, you know, you could actually lose money from the fact there's no fans there. But yeah, no, it's one of them. Listen, it's a competitive game. I think previous jobs that I've had, I've been reasonably successful in cup competitions. So I don't think there's anyone who can sort of point a finger at me and ask questions of how serious I take any competition. I've gone quite far in a few competitions. So, yeah, we'll be going into the game with the right attitude and, you know, hopefully with a side that's capable of winning the game. Having said that, we've got a few injuries that might cause me a few headaches over the next 24 hours. But, yeah, let's see how we go.
Yeah, what about Crewe's opposition? I know it's a cup game, not a league game, but amazing season last season, getting promoted on, you know, compared to a lot of other clubs, relatively modest budget, but they do a good job there, don't they?
They do a great job, and they've got some good footballers, there's no doubt about it, you know. The good thing from Crewe's point of view as well, not a lot's changed from last season. You know, they've lost a couple of players. Obviously, James to us, they lost the lad, Walker, who's on loan. And yeah, I think it's one of them where they're pretty much as they were last year. I know they've made a couple of decent additions, especially in the striker position, but their midfield hasn't really changed much other than James, and obviously the back four is pretty formidable in terms of, you know, it doesn't change that often. So they've got a system that works for them. It's difficult to play against, but you know, I like to think that we've got something similar that could be an issue for them as well.
Finally, from me, you touched on the injuries. Brinket and Jackson have been a concern, I know, for you. Are they still a concern, and any other problems?
Yeah, no, they're still a concern at the minute. We've got one or two other concerns going into the game, which are going to be 50-50. So Max Melbourne will be 50-50, whether he's going to be available, and also Joe Walsh. So as you can imagine, quite a few defenders there that are going to...
Well, centre halves.
Yeah. So, yeah, we might have to shift the team around a little bit and play a couple of people in positions that's not particularly familiar with them.
I suppose, first of all, it must be good just to get back playing competitive football after such a long layoff.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that everyone's looking forward to. I mean, you can try and dress up the friendly games, and even when they're in stadiums, and try and, you know, put some kind of importance to them. But the reality is the players know that, you know, it's a League Cup tie tomorrow, and whoever does play, the players that do play, they'll be doing their utmost to try and win the game.
I suppose in a sense this season is going to be one of a kind for plenty of reasons. I think it's well documented, obviously COVID over the summer. There's a bit of a fixture sort of congestion at the start. I know you tend to play a lot of games over the course of the season. I mean, how would you sort of figure out the balance between, you know, cup competitions and then the league? I mean, have you got any sort of way that you're going to favour maybe the league over the cup or vice versa?
No, not particularly. I think obviously what we've done over the pre-season is try to make sure that the majority of players got very, very similar minutes. I think that's important, so that going into these competitive fixtures, everyone's pretty much where they should be or could expect to be. So I think that when the games start, obviously tomorrow, I think you're going to find this year probably more than ever that sides will rotate their squads. There's no doubt about that. They will. I don't think you're going to see like you've maybe done in previous seasons where maybe 12 or 13 players have played majority of the season for the sides that are at the top of the table and been successful. I think it's going to be a bit different, and we have to be mindful of that. You know, we have to be mindful of the fact that, you know, it's not going to be 5 or 6 games in the balance when the team doesn't change. We have to be adaptable, and I know the players are aware of that.
Yeah, and then obviously just going forward again, a lot of the youngsters who I know we spoke about it just after the Scunthorpe game, a lot of the youngsters sort of played in pre-season. Is it a sort of, do you see it as a chance for them to sort of try and stake their claim as well just throughout the course of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few of them obviously in pre-season that haven't done themselves any harm at all in some of their performances. You know, the performance levels have been pretty good. And we're excited about that, you know. At the end of the day, it's up to them to take, you know, take that opportunity when it comes their way. And yes, we'll have to look after them at certain times as well, because we can't expect them to sort of play 40 games a season just coming straight into it. But when an opportunity arises, it's up to them to take it.
The period that we're in at the moment, obviously this is your first game in 6 months, believe it or not. It's quite hard to get your head around that, isn't it? Can you just sum up your overriding emotion that you're finally actually going to be stepping out there tomorrow to play a competitive game of football at long last after what has been a very, very testing period for everybody?
It's probably relief more than anything. I think everyone's at, you know, at that point where you know, we spoke about it for a long time up and down the country, every club, about, you know, when's it going to be, when are we going to be back playing again? And then there was a few dates that were branded around and it got extended. And I think the longer it got sort of locked down, I know I can't speak for everybody, but certainly myself, you guys were probably the same. I was getting a little bit more agitated, a little bit losing my patience with people. And but then when we came back in, it felt quite normal, if I'm being honest, you know, because pre-season is what it is. But I think the thing that obviously we don't know what's going to be like, Matt, is you know, playing without crowds. I mean, obviously the Championship lads and Premier League lads have experienced it. The lads that were in the playoffs have experienced it. But there's a lot of clubs that haven't. We're one of them. So we just almost have to make sure from a mental point of view and a psychological point of view that we focus on the game, the team in front of us, and any sort of distractions that might happen outside of that. You know, we can't control that, and we can't control the fact there's no fans in there. So we just got to make sure that we focus on the game and the team ahead of us. Thanks
for that. With COVID-19 very much at the forefront of mind, what's been the biggest challenge for you as a manager over the last 6 months?
Well, there quite a few things. I mean, obviously, trying to stay in contact with the players was certainly one. You know, because different players will deal with it, you know, better than others. That was one. I think it was difficult when trying to do the best thing for everybody. So when it was release and retain, you know, it was difficult that, you know, you're having to release players and do it like this or over the phone, you know, instead of like face to face, like I like to do things normally. That was very, very difficult. And recruitment was difficult, as you can imagine, because, you know, it's a little bit different speaking to a player and looking him in the eye and you know, getting a feel for, if he really gets a feel for what you want to do and how you want to do things, rather than over Zoom or Teams or whatever it may be. And you know, even though that was difficult, I like to think that, you know, while a lot of people were sleeping, we were working really, really hard and trying to make sure that we build relationships up, so that when we had the opportunity to meet people, social distance, you know, of course, that we were in a good place and we were already ahead of the queue.
And just finally, you sort of touched upon this already, but if you wouldn't mind just putting it in a nutshell for me, put it in the presser. Again, with COVID-19 very much at the forefront of your mind, what are your fears and what are your hopes for the future?
If I'm being really honest, I'm trying not to look too far ahead. I think that was one of the biggest things that COVID probably learnt me a little bit. You don't know what's around the corner, and obviously this thing moves really, really fast. So, you know, we a little bit of a cliche, and apologies, but it will be, if it's not necessarily game by game, it'll be week by week, and see where we're at. You know, the one thing I'm saying to the players all the time is, look, you know, we can't see this thing, you know, and it's one of them where we have to be sensible, you know. So, you know, whether that's, you know, washing your hands and doing the basic things a little bit more regular than you used to. One thing we can't do when they come into the building, we can control it and make sure that the place is clean and hygienic, make sure the players are, you know, doing what they should do. But when they leave and they go home, you know, whether they go into a restaurant, into a shopping mall, a cinema, whatever it may be, we can't control that, and rightly so. But just basically asking the players to be as sensible as they can. And if we find ourselves in a situation where a game's called off because, you know, something regarding the opposition, then that is what it is. We have to be prepared for that. And, we've had them conversations with the players, and I think it's important that we get ready for a little bit of a disruptive season. If it goes brilliantly and plain sailing, great. But if it doesn't, I'd like to think that we'll be more than prepared for it.
Hi, Michael. A couple of questions really about the financial situation at the moment. Obviously, you're operating under a salary cap now. How's that impacted on your budgets, and how's it going to impact you going forward?
Well, it hasn't impacted us that much, to be honest with you, John, because I think Liam and the board have been quite open about it. We're probably about 40% down on the budget. So, might say, well, you just contradict yourself. Yes, it's clearly had a massive impact on our budget. But I think under the circumstances, I'll be surprised if, there's a lot of other clubs in the league that are not in a similar position. Because of the impact on that budget, the salary cap from us as a football club, I don't think it'll be ever one of them where we have to think of something clever to try and get round it. I think we'll always be below it. And listen, I'm fine with that. I think I said one of the first things we spoke about before with Michael is that we've created a model that we think will be sustainable for the football club. And to do that, you don't have to worry about overpaying and paying sort of ridiculous money for players to try and get them in the building. It becomes your recruitment, how good you recruit, and how quickly and how wide you go and look at players and spot players. So a little bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but listen, the budget's been slashed, quite heavy, but that was something that I expected. And to be honest with you, I think as a football club, and certainly the staff and the players, were just delighted that the likes of Clive have obviously been able to, one, make sure that we can try and put a squad together that can be competitive this year. And the reality is going forward, we've got a football club. At some point, the fans are going to be allowed back into the stadium, and I'm sure that when they do, and if we're allowed full capacity, I think the fans will be getting right behind the players that we've brought in and the squad that we've put together.
The key, obviously, is going to be getting spectators back into the stadiums, as you say. If it goes on for any protracted length of time, do you fear for the future of the professional game as we've come to know it?
100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If this continues, say, for instance, the full season, I'm sitting here saying that as a football club, we've made the right cuts in the right places to try and protect the football club. But how long can that continue? And the reality is, if this continued for another full season, I think it'd be very, very difficult, not just for us as a football club. I think for the whole of League One and League Two, there won't be very many clubs. I don't know a way around that. The option is obviously to do what a lot of people have tried to do and say over the last few months in terms of the revenue come down from the Premier League into the lower leagues. But, that argument will surely roll on for the next God knows how many months and years. So, yeah, that's quite worrying. I think that's why I said before to Matt, I think it's one of them where we're just taking it week by week. If I start worrying about stuff like that, it would become very, very depressing, and obviously the job's hard enough as it is at the minute. So I think that, keep the players focused, worry about what's ahead of us in the next few days, next week or so. And hopefully it'll be a situation where come October, November, December, we get an opportunity to play in front of fans again.
And do you have more confidence going into this season rather than starting 7 or 8 games into last season?
Well, two things. One, you're dead right. There's no doubt about it. Getting a good pre-season under your belt is key. This pre-season's been a little bit different. It's been a little bit shorter than it probably would be. So I that's been a little bit more difficult. It's been less organised in terms of the actual games that you play, because obviously there's a few restrictions, or there certainly was a few restrictions around you know, COVID and social distancing and stuff. So we've had a couple of training ground matches instead of playing in stadiums. So that's been difficult. But in terms of being organised and going into the season, we're going to be as organised and prepared as well as any team in this league. That's what I can guarantee. Now, you know, whether teams have got bigger budgets because of the salary cap, or better players and more equipped squads, then, you know, we'll find out. Time will tell on that one. We have got a small squad. You'll see tomorrow that once we have 3 or 4 injuries, how hard it hits us as a squad, because our numbers are low. But it is what it is, and we'll just get on with it. You know, that's why we try to recruit players who can play in 2 or 3 different positions, because we know we haven't got as many players as some of the other sides. But if we have to play in a situation where we've got 3 or 4 missing, at least we've got players who can fill in certain roles.